how can you be so right but feel so wrong? I hate to say it. It doesn't make me feel fantastic. I mean, it makes me feel good that I don't have to come here and say I screwed up. And some people will call me an idiot. But I don't feel great about how things played out despite being wrong. I would rather have been wrong than to get it so right. You can check and see my last podcast before this was poor evaluations of Skylar is going to set up Tua for failure. And this was a atrocious, terrible, abysmal display of the offensive line. And I'm not saying this because I'm some kind of genius. This is simply about holding on to the fundamentals of the game, no matter how much splash other areas get. And in that, you can see when things are grossly out of whack, how they're going to trend. Now, if things are kind of in the middle, a little good, a little bad, it gets more difficult. And then there's a lot more nuance. But when core elements are grossly out of whack, as in this case with the Miami Dolphins, they had 6 sacks today. 6. And 4 quarterbacks in 4 games have been knocked out on the Dolphins. Let that sink in for just a minute. Right, Eric? That is horrific. And this game, for anybody who hasn't really fully pulled themselves into how critical the offensive line is, just look at the Vikings. Unbelievable, talented receiver, running back, a really good quarterback, and they couldn't do jack diddly-do for most of the day because their offensive line was getting demolished by the Dolphins. This trench warfare was on both sides, and it's clearly evident that if your offensive line isn't even average, you're going to have a very, very tough time. And our defensive front is a monster. Boy, I called up a lot of stuff in here, but a lot of the good stuff that we saw came about simply by pure domination of the Dolphins' defensive line to a below average Vikings offensive line. Things would look different if that offensive line was in the 15 or 10 range, but they're not. They're like 20, 25. But us, we're in a different category. And Skylar, I said it was going to be a poor evaluation because this guy was going to get beat up. I really didn't think he'd get knocked out, but he had 1 quarter, and you saw some kind of good stuff there, but it's very difficult to make a full evaluation because you had a quarter, and because of the offensive line being as it is, and because we have such elite receivers, it creates this incongruency, and the defense plays certain things certain ways, and so the evaluation kind of gets tough, especially when the quarterback's getting hit. There's all kind of crazy penalties. And so I don't know how bad Skylar's hand is. I don't know if it's broken, didn't look broken, or it wasn't a cast, just probably banged up or whatever. But this is going to be the trend. We could talk about Tua, his injury history. Well, now Skylar's been knocked out. He should have been knocked out last game too. It was so close, guys. And so this is why I say Tua needs rabbit ears. Skylar needs, any quarterback behind this offensive line needs rabbit ears on their evaluation because this was the 45th best offensive line in football last year. I won't say that this year, but at least the last 2 games, clearly the 45th best offensive line in football again. So we are now 3-3 in 3rd place in the division. Jets beat the Packers, so they're a game and a head above us at 4-2. Bills, they play the Chiefs. They're 4-1. Even if they lose, they're still going to be a game ahead of us. And we're tied with our record for the Pats, but we got the edge on them because we beat them. And it has nothing to do, look, certain things, I'll get on into all that. I'm going to have my chapters. You'll see The chapters today are going to be the game, O-line going forward. I'm not going to get too crazy about it. Get in there and show you some basic keys to all these things. And it's not to say, the season's going to be great. We're going to win next week, or we're going to lose next week. It's all over. You got to keep the evaluation going. When does Tehran come back? Tehran being back changes everything. Okay? But we got Pitt and we got Detroit coming up, and those are absolutely critical games, and they are not sure wins if Tua's coming back, guys. If you're saying that, you have your heads in the blinders and you just want to be positive, and that's fine. It's football. Go for it. I mean, I hope you're right. But if things keep trending in this direction, the media is going to start their thing soon. They already started showing their cracks on McDaniel, the ping pong table thing, which I didn't want to get into. But you could see they love McDaniel. And now he's having a little bit of trouble, and they're ready to put the knives in. So those knives are going to come back on our man Tua. And if Tua gets knocked out and people don't like Tua and Skyler comes in and he's their man, he's going to get the same treatment. And it's going to over and over and over and over. It's a repeating process. Groundhog Day. Check the movie out and you'll understand. But it's not the end of the world yet. We've got to let it play out. So Tua will help. He will. People don't want to. His release, his ability to understand certain things is going to help a lot. But this Pittsburgh team, who just beat Tampa, can get after the quarterback. They have a good front. They've got Flores and a very good head coach, and they are going to be tough because they're going to be patient and run the football. And our zero, Minnesota made a lot of coaching mistakes today. They were very impatient, and that's part of the reason why it was such a close game in many regards. All right, but anyway, thank you for stopping by. I know it's a Dolphins loss. I don't know how many people are going to show up here. But I thank you for stopping by. The likes, the subscribes, especially the comments. Especially the comments means so much. I want to give a shout out to you guys and to my sponsor, because without both of you, this show ain't going down. Ace Per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. Very basic. Consistency is built off the offensive line on both sides of the football. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but if you don't have an elite mobile quarterback, the offensive line, depending on the lack of eliteness and the lack of movement skills, the offensive line becomes more and more and more critical. And guys like Allen even and Mahomes, they get restricted by poor offensive lines. You could see it. Look at Mahomes in the Super Bowl. They lost to Tampa. Look at Allen a lot of times last year, losing to Jacksonville and this and that. Even these great quarterbacks, they need protection and some semblance of a run game and some semblance of a line. Now, mortals, even more so. So, Dolphins, you want to be positive, look at that front. The Dolphins front, Flowers, who we brought in for a song and dance, Ingram, along with Phillips, who's really coming on, Wilkins, Sealer, even Agba. All these guys are unbelievable asset. And that pass rush, this secondary should have been taking advantage like nobody's business. They should have been. There were some really good plays, and they held their ground. And even Noah had 2 sightings. And they were very good plays. But I like to be realistic. If you go back to my evaluation of him prior to the 2021 season, I said his strengths are the vertical routes. He is good at shadowing and playing behind, and he is excellent in the vertical routes as long as the guy isn't too fast. But what he has problems with is breaks. He's slow to come out of his breaks. So when you see him coming out of breaks on a receiver and able to do what he did today, that's when you get extremely excited. This was great news for the kid, great hope, but we need to see more. Still was very nice to see. Howard had some nice plays, but then he got beat on the over. But the reality is this defensive line set us up for success. And so you can't really blame the secondary. Can't really blame Boyer. Can't really blame the defense. Waddle and Hill, what do they have? Hill had 12 for 177. Waddle 6 for 129. Yeah, he had the fumble, but you can't blame the loss on him because there's no way with the talent that we have, we should have been in this kind of situation where we're chasing to get these points in a close game when we've done what we've done to that offense. Goes back to the offensive line, but I'll get into that. Teddy, 23 for 34, 329, 2-2. Lots of yards, guys, but teams are starting to figure out what McDaniel does. A lot of the razzle-dazzle stuff, they're starting to say, okay, we've got a track record on this, and he has to do these other things well to make that razzle-dazzle happen. Running inside consistently, pass protecting. But again, we can't, and so some of that razzle-dazzle gets clipped. There's pressures, fumbles, there's interceptions. Penalties was a big thing. 5 penalties on that drive. And some of that has to come back to McDaniel because the penalties are starting to rise. I don't put it on him just yet. But even Edmonds, he had 14 for 49, 3.5. But outside, we couldn't get inside. You can't blame this game on the defense. You can't blame it on the offense. And even if Waddles, it comes back to the offensive line. Now, the Vikings are an elite team. They're 5-1 now, but they're not a 5-1 team. They've got excellent receivers, an excellent running back, a very good quarterback, but their offensive line is no bueno. And their defense is meh. It's okay. It's got some pretty decent elements. It's got some weakish elements. You'd probably rate them around 20. So we were going against a 20th ranked defense. We held their offense to nothing, and we couldn't put points on. Why? We couldn't protect, and we couldn't run the football. It all has to come back to this offensive line. I know that's kind of boring, but that is absolutely the truth. Now, Shell, no good. He'd be better inside. If it was me, Teron would come back. I'd pull Eichenberg out. I'd put Shell at left guard and get him out. But I don't know. If we don't, you got to ask yourself why. Jackson might be back next week. He'll be a little bit better than Little, but it ain't going to be a huge. It's not like he's coming and changing everything. Teron's toe, he hasn't practiced in over a month. He's going to play next week. It's going to be critical. How long does this thing? What's the actual injury? I don't know. Teron comes back. A lot of this hope opens up, guys, but he's got to play around 80, 85%. Eichenberg is terrible, guys. You go, do I have to do another film study on how bad he's playing? And you got to ask yourself, why does he continue to play? Why? He is poor. He's the worst left guard in the game. Why is he starting? And that's going to help. We can't really say why, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that points to why. And it's not good, and it doesn't have anything to do with McDaniel. Hunt played well, but I think he had 2 penalties. Played well, sort of, had some issues, sort of, but a lot of that has to do with new guys around you not being secure with the guy next to you, guys around you failing. Now, some of those were just all on him, okay? Connor had a pretty decent game. I got to go back and check. He was beat on, I think it was 1 pass rush. I got to check. His run attack is really good. That's where his strength is, but we're not running the football because we don't have the talent. You pull Eichenberg out and you put Robert Jones in there or Shell and even Jackson, and you're going to see a rise in this offensive line. Not to the point possible, I don't think, where we're going to be highly successful, but you're going to be able to do a lot more. Eichenberg is a black hole, guys. Kid's a nice kid. He's a good kid. Maybe next year he'll be better. This year, no. Now, going forward, it's not over. 3-3. We've got the edge on the Bills as far as a division game. We got one with the Pats in the division game where Sands won against the Jets. We're going to play, we got to play them at home later on, so we'll see. Last game of the year. It's not going to be as easy as many people think. We're in the mix the next 2 games are critical. But if this offensive line continues the way it is, Tyrann continues to be injured, it's going to say poor things for this season. We have no other way. With what's been invested and the window that we have, because there is a window here, guys. Players will be moving on, too expensive to pay for, and we've used a lot of picks to kind of fill this stuff up, and you're not going to be able to fill it all up with rookies. You've got a 2 to 3 year window this year, next year, and maybe the year after that to get to that point you want to be. And we've got to be second in the division at least and go to the playoffs. And the only thing that's holding us back, really, I mean, injuries, Byron, Howard, Kohu, and now Needham's out. Got to wonder what's going on with this training staff. Can I blame it on them? I don't know, but it's just anytime you see this amount of injuries, you got to figure out what's going on with the staff, the development. I don't know. I'm not going to put a lot of injuries, guys. So the secondary is something that can restrict us. But really, really, this year and beyond is about the offensive line. We've still got to see how it plays out. Tyrann is the key. He's the key. Next week and the week after that, we've got to win at least one. At least one. We win 2, everything's okay. It's back into a neutral position. And then you got the bye coming up a little short time after that, a couple of somewhat easier games. But next week's game is big. If we go 0-2 over the next 2 weeks, bad news. And this offensive line will not be fixed like this. We struggle drafting. You can't just sign all offensive linemen. You don't have the money. And we are neither deep nor decent. And you need to be both. So we really have 2 offensive linemen. Tyrann counts, but his injury is a flux, so it's like 2.5, because you never know. And then you need at least 3 other guys. You need 3 more starters, maybe 2 more starters certainly, and you need some depth. And we have struggled for years to build this offensive line. But it can happen. We can see how it plays out. I don't think Eichenberg's stepping up. To me, now Jackson growing and being a little bit better is the key. If he can just be average, then that would really make us have 1.5 positions on the offensive line to fill, plus that depth. And I think that's a little bit more doable. So this wasn't a good loss. I thought it was expected. We got to understand whatever happens next week and the week after that, it's critical for the season. But evaluating McDaniel, this offense, the defense, the team, the quarterbacks especially, it's got to come to the offensive line. And whoever built it, the architect, that has to be the person that gets all the credit or all of the heavy weight. I'll get some film study out to you early in the week. I see everybody's doing film studies, so I'm going to do it earlier this week so I can get into the mix over here. I appreciate you stopping by. Guys, hold tight. Let the evaluations play out. Still a lot of good stuff with this team. Injuries, consistency. This all will play out big, but it's not yes or no just yet. Except for this offensive line, I think it's pretty much a no unless my man Tyrann comes back. Garrison, catch you next time. Be well. Go Fins. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with AceBread.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.